Today, we're bringing you the heartwarming tale of Shadow, an adorable black kitten with eyes like golden coins and a heart full of fear. In this charming story, you'll witness Shadow's incredible journey from a timid kitten to a brave explorer. When an unexpected situation forces Shadow to face her fears head-on, she discovers a strength she never knew she had. So, curl up in your favorite spot, maybe with your own furry friend by your side, and let's join Shadow on her adventure. In a cozy house on Maple Street lived a fluffy black kitten named Shadow. Her yellow eyes sparkled like golden coins, but they were often wide with fear. You see, Shadow was afraid of almost everything around her. She would tremble at the sight of big bouncy dogs and their loud barks. When her family watched TV, even the tiniest bark from the screen would send Shadow scurrying under the couch, her little heart racing. Climbing trees was another thing that terrified Shadow. While other cats in the neighborhood loved to scale the tall oaks and maples, perching on branches and watching the world below, Shadow preferred to keep all four paws firmly on the ground. She would gaze up at her feline friends, wishing she could join them but too scared to try. The thought of being so high up made her whiskers quiver and her tail puff up like a bottle brush. Being left alone in the house was perhaps Shadow's biggest fear. Whenever her family had to go out, leaving her behind, she would mew pitifully and hide under the bed. The silence of the empty house seemed to press in on her, making every little creak and groan sound like a monster lurking in the shadows. She would curl up into a tight ball, her eyes squeezed shut, counting the minutes until her family returned. The outside world was a source of constant worry for Shadow. While other cats loved to bask in the sunshine or chase butterflies in the garden, Shadow preferred to watch from the safety of the windowsill. The rustling leaves, chirping birds, and even the gentle breeze all seemed like potential dangers to her. She couldn't understand why anyone would want to venture beyond the safety of their home. As night fell, Shadow's fears only grew stronger. The darkness seemed to come alive, filling every corner with imaginary monsters. Shadow would huddle close to her family, seeking comfort in their presence. Even the soft glow of a nightlight couldn't fully ease her worries. She longed for the sun to rise again, chasing away the scary shadows that danced on the walls. One sunny morning, Shadow's family began to bustle about, packing bags and talking excitedly. "We're going to visit Aunt Martha," Mom explained to the children. "She's not feeling well, so we'll stay overnight to help her." Shadow's ears perked up at the word overnight, and a wave of anxiety washed over her. She had never been away from home before, and the thought terrified her. As the family prepared for their trip, they decided to take Shadow along. "It'll be good for her," Dad said, reaching for Shadow's carrier. But the moment Shadow saw the carrier, she bolted. Her little paws carried her faster than they ever had before, and she squeezed into a tiny space behind the washing machine. No matter how much her family called and coaxed, Shadow refused to come out. Time ticked by, and soon the family had to leave or risk being late. With heavy hearts, they decided they had no choice but to leave Shadow behind. "We'll only be gone for one night," Mom reassured everyone. "Shadow will be fine. We'll leave her plenty of food and water." As the front door closed and the car engine started, Shadow's heart sank. She was all alone, facing her biggest fear. At first, Shadow stayed hidden by the washing machine, too scared to move. But as the hours passed and her tummy began to rumble, she cautiously crept out. The house seemed enormous and eerily quiet without her family. Every little sound made her jump. She tiptoed to her food bowl, eating quickly and glancing around nervously with each bite. Darkness enveloped the house, and Shadow found herself facing all her fears at once. She was alone, in the dark, without the comfort of her family. Her little body trembled as she huddled in a corner of the living room. But then, something unexpected happened. As she sat there, ears alert and eyes wide, she realized that nothing bad had actually occurred. Shadow took a deep breath and looked around. The house was still the same familiar place she'd always known. The creaks and groans were just the normal sounds of her home. Slowly, she uncurled from her tight ball and took a tentative step forward. Then another, and another. With each step, she felt a tiny bit braver. Boldened by her small act of courage, Shadow decided to explore. She padded softly from room to room, rediscovering her home from a new perspective. The darkness, she realized, wasn't as scary as she'd thought. In fact, her yellow eyes adjusted quickly, allowing her to see quite well in the dim light. As the night wore on, Shadow found herself enjoying the quiet solitude. She played with her toys, chasing a small ball across the floor and pouncing on her favorite mouse. For the first time, she climbed onto the windowsill and gazed out at the moonlit world, fascinated by the gentle movement of trees in the night breeze. When morning came, Shadow felt different. She had survived the night alone and discovered it wasn't so terrible after all. As sunlight streamed through the windows, she felt a new sense of confidence. She decided to try something she'd always been too scared to do before. She approached the cat flap in the kitchen door. With a deep breath, Shadow pushed her head through the cat flap. The fresh morning air ruffled her fur, carrying the scents of flowers and grass. Cautiously, she stepped out into the garden. The world seemed big and a little overwhelming, but also exciting. She took a few more steps, feeling the cool grass beneath her paws. Encouraged by her success, Shadow ventured further into the garden. She chased a butterfly, giggling at the way it fluttered just out of reach. She even approached the old oak tree in the yard. Looking up at its sturdy branches, she decided to give climbing a try. Slowly but surely, she made her way up to the first low branch. From her perch on the branch, Shadow could see over the fence into the neighbor's yard. To her surprise, she spotted the friendly golden retriever next door. Instead of feeling scared, she watched curiously as the dog played with a ball. The dog noticed her and gave a gentle woof of greeting. Shadow, feeling brave, meowed back. When her family returned home that afternoon, they were amazed to find Shadow waiting for them in the front yard. She ran to greet them, purring loudly and rubbing against their legs. They couldn't believe the transformation in their once fearful kitten. Shadow had discovered her own courage and was eager to show it. From that day forward, Shadow lived up to her name in a new way. She was no longer a scared little shadow hiding from the world, but a brave explorer casting her own light. She enjoyed climbing trees with the neighborhood cats, made friends with the golden retriever next door, and even looked forward to family trips. Shadow had learned that the world was full of wonderful adventures, and she was ready to face them all with her newfound courage.